Hello and welcome to Vintage Video, Walking with Wildlife. I'm David Mossner. In this episode, we'll look at wild areas, farming with wild animals, and the age-old hunting traditions that run deep in the upper Midwest. We start in Janesville, Wisconsin, where local members of the Audubon Society sought to reclaim 10 acres of the city, which was essentially a wasteland. I returned to the area in 2015 and learned the dreams you'll hear about in this story came true.
We've got an opportunity here to benefit both the wildlife and the plant life of this area by a natural area through land preservation.
With little fanfare, the Green Rock Audubon Society unveiled its biggest project, creating a park for the wild.
But we're talking about 10 acres approximately of what is at this present time basically a wasteland that we want to create some sort of natural area out of.
The pond was created by the city when Beloit Avenue was widened, but members of the society envisioned more for the small tract of land, then approached Janesville officials to volunteer.
It won't be a pristine natural area, it won't be a scientific station, but it will be an area that will have some prairie grass growing around the pond. It will be a stopover area for waterfowl during migration. We have a variety of small birds and animals like beaver that are using this area, and it'll be reserved for public enjoyment as well as wildlife habitat.
The change won't happen quickly. Although some birds and animals are already moving in, the Audubon Society expects the naturalization to take more than 10 years. There will be some city help, but it's primarily a volunteer effort.
The city just does not have the resources, either labor or money, to be able to maintain. Preservation of a wetlands area is labor intensive and it can be costly.
The wonders of the wild won't be off limits. The pond and brook are on the Ice Age Trail, allowing people to visit nature in the city.
I love to see it in the middle of a city anytime. I think we always need a little more nature in our lives.
Dave Mossner, WISC News 3, Janesville.
While working with WISC Channel 3, I met Vern Williams, who loved recording, something he picked up while serving on the island of Samoa. While he found music in a variety of places, he made a special effort to record bird calls.
And on a solid future. Dave Mossner, WISC News 3, Dubuque.
I've never been this dirty in my life.
It was a dirty job, all right, and Stan Mickelson, who lost 4 buildings to the storm, couldn't do it alone.
Look hopeless without all these people here. To go try to walk out with 1 or 2 people and pick up all this mess, it looks impossible.
Most of the helpers are aspiring farmers themselves, members of Edgerton's Future Farmers of America group. Others came just to lend a hand to neighbors in need.
A lot of friends out here got hit.
Because the farmers out here need help cleaning up, so we volunteer our time to help them. We cleaned most of it up out around this area so far. We're getting tired, but it's worth it.
The big effort won't reconstruct any destroyed farm buildings, but it is another step back for Mickelson from last week's storm.
That makes it look a lot better.
Now that the wood's piled up, Mickelson plans to burn away the storm's souvenirs as soon as possible. Dave Mossner, WISC News 3, Edgerton. It's the second time around for Ralph and Catherine Kingsley.
In sickness and in health.
Instead of a church, the wedding is in the Evansville Manor where Ralph now lives. The couple's 45th wedding anniversary is in August, but they don't.
Next we go to the fish hatchery in Lake Mills, where they raise fish for state lakes. But the problem which led to this story was that natural predators were doing better than any fisherman, gobbling up to 40,000 pounds of young salmon the year before. Fish valued by the state at $10,000.
Salmon are the proverbial fish in a barrel. Destined for Lake Michigan, 300,000 of the 500,000 salmon Wisconsin stocks in the lake are raised here. A fish designed to lure anglers and their money to Wisconsin shores. But in Lake Mills, it's raccoon, mink, muskrat, herons, kingfishers, even grackles, filling up at the fish buffet. The predators gobbled 40,000 fish last year. It's an expensive lunch. The fish are valued at $10,000. A variety of measures to protect the fish have been tried. Reflective tape and stringing rope over the water worked, but only for a while.
All these techniques work for about 10 days to 2 weeks, and then they gradually become less and less effective.
The best defense has been nylon net covers, or it used to be.
The birds have actually learned to walk on these net covers, push the netting down into the water, and then reach the fish right through it.
Now, shotguns and traps will be the new line of defense, but it won't be an all-out war.
We watch for those individual birds that are habitual repeaters, those that keep coming back despite the fact that we chase them off, try to scare them away with it, noise and different other methods.
Hatchery workers will shoot at the birds, but are limited to no more than 5 great blue herons and 5 green herons. The limits on kingfishers and grackles are greater. Raccoon, mink, and opossum will be caught in live traps on land. Muskrat will be trapped in leg holds underwater, where they are eating fish and damaging the ponds.
So it's not a lot of animals, it's something that we would rather not do.
These are temporary measures. A roof with netting on each side is to be installed over the salmon raceways later in the year for the permanent solution. Dave Mossner, WISC News 3, Lake Mills.
South Dakota's reservoirs are home for large numbers of salmon, but without natural habitat for the game fish to mate, people had to step in to lend a hand. The goal in the third year of the station at Whitlock's Bay was to get 800 female salmon, which could produce 2 million eggs. Brown trout also climbed the ladder to Whitlock's Bay, but unlike the salmon, they were able to return to the lake afterwards.
The mature 4-year-old salmon are answering nature's call to Whitlock's Bay spawning station in a big way. But before the mating begins, the fish are measured and weighed, and the young ones released for another chance later on.
We'd like to get about 2,000 adult salmon to return up the station or up the ladder there. And if 2,000 of those return, 800 of them should be good females. And there's about 2,500 eggs per female. So if you take that 2,500 times 800, there's 2 million eggs. And we get, like I said, about half of them will hatch, or 50% hatch rate. And that's about 1 million that we stock back in the reservoir each year.
So far, 322,000 eggs have been collected and bound for the McNenny Hatchery and Spearfish. Because salmon die after mating, a Webster butcher sells the fish fresh, smoked, and pickled.
For South Dakota, it's kind of a unique thing because it's pretty hard for us to come by real good fresh fish out here, like the people that live next to the ocean and that sort of thing. We're getting fresh fish right from the river.
Brown trout join the spawning at Whitlock's, but the trout are able to return to the lake after mating. The third year of spawning both trout and salmon is the best effort yet. Dave Mossner, Kellerland News, Whitlock's Bay.
In the early 1990s, raising elk became an alternative to beef cattle when it came to livestock. In this story, I met an elk farmer who established his herd with an eye on a variety of potential customers. Powder made from elk antlers could be sold to customers in Asia at the time for $100 a pound.
Come on, boys.
Jim Korleski has always been fascinated by the beauty of the elk, so he bought a pair to raise as a hobby. His hobby now numbers 24.
It was always a dream in the back of my mind to enlarge my elk herd, and they are a very lucrative adventure.
Elk once roamed much of the Midwest. Now they're in demand, especially in the Far East. Korleski is tapping into that market, selling elk antlers worth up to $100 a pound as medicine in Asia.
It has been proven that the elk antler will actually give a symptomatic relief of a number of human ailments.
More than antlers, elk meat is the prize for most farmers like Korleski. But because elk farming is growing so quickly, elk now are more valuable as breeders than entrees. Still, Korleski says the days when elk will go from the farm to the dinner table may not be too far off, especially for today's health-conscious society.
Elk meat is actually lower in cholesterol than turkey breast, and it's low in fat. It's a very nutritional food.
Korleski is one of 60 licensed farmers in Wisconsin and serves on the board of directors for the industry's trade association. With more than 600 breeders now in North America, Korleski hopes to stay on the cutting edge as elk carve their niche on the farm. Dave Mossner, WISC News 3, Rock County.
The season for mourning doves in South Dakota attracted 15,000 hunters. small numbers compared to the 100,000 hunters going after pheasant. Rules for the hunt only allowed shooting birds in flight, which make them a much tougher target.
Mourning dove season attracts 15,000 hunters in the state, a much smaller number than the 100,000 for pheasant season, but there's more doves to go around, nearly 500 million nationwide. Despite their name, these birds with the aerobatic flying maneuvers may actually be laughing instead of crying during the season.
There's a lot more shooting involved in this than there is killing, and you know, we all like to put a few doves on the ground and have some baked in wild rice with a little sizzling or bacon wrapped around them, and they taste pretty good that way.
Hunters must be at least 50 yards from roads and can only shoot doves in flight. Officials say the birds are plentiful statewide and survive the drought in pretty good shape.
If they get a lot of thunderstorms and rains, particularly East River, it has a tendency to blow the young out of the nest. They build a very, very flimsy nest. So I honestly don't think that the drought has probably had much of an effect on mourning doves.
The best time to hunt mourning doves is the beginning of the season before the migration south sends most of the birds out of state.
Find a water hole where they're feeding. Sunflower fields are good to be around. And, you know, don't be impatient in the morning sitting around a water hole, because they won't start really coming in until about 9:30, 10 o'clock.
The season's open through October 21st. Dave Mossner, KELOLAND Sports, Hughes County.
Hunters come from all corners of the country and beyond in pursuit of South Dakota's birds. Other than state government and agricultural stories, I did more features on pheasant hunting than any other topic. Here are 3 stories, starting with individual hunters lured to pier for the game bird, then 2 looking at the traditional governor's pheasant hunt, which used the bird to attract more business to the state.
Pheasant and grouse. It's probably 10,000 people in pier for pheasant and grouse.
Mike Bean drove 22 hours from Louisville, Kentucky looking for South Dakota's state bird. He and his hunting partner plan to stay for a week.
Especially opening day, we do real well. And then, you know, it's a little harder, but we get birds every day. Just you have to work a little harder every time for them.
Working the Lake Oahe shoreline as soon as the clock struck 12 noon, the hunt was on. Cloudy skies, some drizzle, and cool temperatures may have been a factor in the pier area for first-day hunters.
The pheasants seem to be sitting down kind of tight with the rain and the wind and stuff like that. They're sitting pretty tight. They haven't been getting up at all. We've only had like a couple opportunities to shoot even. They've been sitting so tight, and running out the other ends of the fields and stuff.
State game officials say there are fewer birds this year than last, and in the pier area, it seems there are fewer birds.
The pheasants are down. I think there's more in the southern part of the state, but I think for the most part they're down this year here.
From what you've seen, though, you're satisfied there are birds to get?
Oh, yeah, there's birds to get. You just got to work a little harder for them.
Nevertheless, the hunt goes on with hunters trying to get at least a couple in the bag. Dave Mossner, KELOLAND Sports, Hughes County. The governor's hunters hope practice makes perfect because some of the guests don't shoot much. By tomorrow, 400 hunters are hoping to find the state bird outstanding in its field. Revived 9 years ago as an economic development tool, the hunt works, according to a former economic development director.
There is a definite benefit. I think we can signal out several experiences of that just in the last couple of years. There's some companies here today that have been invited to the hunt previous. And
the guest list is drawn from economic development prospects looking at South Dakota, and the operation is run on donations down to an official vehicle for the hunt.
We have everything from the sour cream to the meat to every little thing you can imagine gets donated for this.
The annual hunt includes South Dakota dignitaries as well, and the invitation-only hunt is a hot ticket.
If I can get back for the goose hunt Sunday morning, I will, but I hope to go to the shooting clinic this afternoon and go to the dinner tonight, but I'm very glad to be invited and be included.
The hunters will spread across the central and south-central part of the state, ready to aim and fire at noon tomorrow. Dave Mossner, KELOLAND News, Pier. After loading up on breakfast, the 400 in pier for the governor's hunt stocked more elusive game, the pheasant.
I hope I'm lucky enough to get invited every year until the day I die. It's great fun. Couldn't be better.
This is my 3rd year, and every year it's always an enjoyable time going to the governor's hunt.
The hunt teams up South Dakota businessmen with potential business prospects for an afternoon of shooting pheasant.
We want people to have an impression of South Dakota, of a good business climate, but also a business climate in which you can have fun, and that's kind of the theme of the whole thing. There are people who are definite prospects that we've talked to, and then there are people who are prospects that we would like to convince they should consider us in the event of an expansion. But there are some short-term and some long-range possibilities.
Putting pheasants in the bag is the goal of the hunters, of course, but it's not essential for a good hunt.
I think that the camaraderie is important, and so the just getting out is what is really fun.
The hunters getting the invitation agree it's a great showcase for the state.
I think that there are very few better ways really to show off the state's, I want to say, both human and natural resources. I don't think very many people outside the state of South Dakota realize the variety of natural resource that's available here.
I think that everybody that comes to this hunt goes away and has a really good time, not only with the hunting, but meeting new people and having dinners and the whole program.
South Dakota hopes some of the visiting businesses become a feather in the state's pheasant cap and not get away like some of the pheasants did from the hunters. To make sure the out-of-staters go away happy, each one gets 3 dressed pheasants, whether they shot any or not. Dave Mossner, KELOLAND News, near Okoton.
As a reporter, my favorite part of pheasant hunting was that hunters weren't allowed to take the first shot until 12 noon. That's it for the Walking with Wildlife edition of Vintage Video. I'm David Mossner. See you next time.